Hey guys, so today in this video I'm going to be talking about balance and why it's fundamental to the universe. So first off, I have like a reasoning for this, which is I want to show like why balance is so important. And I know why it's important for survival and all of that. Like for instance, the human body needs to maintain balance, right? It needs to maintain the state. Balance is like the state of things, and you want to maintain the state of things to survive. So if that's like the simplest reason you need to have to care about balance, that's probably what it is. But anyway, I'm going to be talking about how balance is fundamental to the universe, and I just want to show this because I want to show it's a much bigger thing than just maintaining the state of things. So maintaining the state of things is that aspect of balance, but you also have canceling out. So you have canceling out, which is a form of balance. So when you look at gravity, the reason why the planet doesn't just go like moving around all sorts of directions, just random. Well, it wouldn't go randomly, but you could say, oh, maybe. I mean, basically, the reason why it stays still, and it's not moving, weirdly, right? It just stays in that constant orbit. It stays in that constant orbit because centrally, the central to that orbit, so which is the sun, it has balance, and it has balance with the sun and with all the other planets around it, and the other solar systems around our solar system. And so that is how you have this. That's one example of balance. You also have balance with proton and electron coming together, or two protons or two electrons pushing away. Again, there's balance. If they push away, they're not actually, they're going in opposite directions, so it's still a balanced form. And if they're coming together, it's a balanced form, right? They balance out. It's like when two balls like hit and then they stop. There's also that form of like, right? So we were saying the gravity balances out. The reason why is because all the gravities balance out. If you don't have them balancing out, if you have two super strong ones, and then they'll come together, and they'll just keep coming together and keep coming together until they collide. So there's that to it. But essentially, my favorite example is the reasoning, the requirements, and the consequences. So the reasoning is like you have something and you need a reasoning for it. So you have something, you need a reasoning for it, then you need a reasoning for that, you need a reasoning for that, you need a reasoning for that, you need a reasoning for that. And so basically you're just going like this. And then it's like, well, you have this thing and you have a reasoning for what happens with this afterwards, and the reasoning for what happens with that afterwards. So reasoning for the consequences of like, and then the consequences for the next consequences, the consequences for those consequences, and the consequences for those consequences, and so on. And so you end up with just a point in time, the Big Bang. So you have a Big Bang or a big whatever, but it could be just like an action, right? So just any action, and you have the requirements and the consequences going in time. And this is what happens. You could say like this is kind of like a mirror universe. A mirror universe is the requirements before the Big Bang. So like, well, it's not before the Big Bang, but you could argue that the Big Bang needs a balancing act. So of course, to balance out the Big Bang, you have our universe, but you also have a balancing universe, maybe, right? But at the very least, you also have a balancing act for the action, right? So because basically the universe is net zero, it's not magic. If it was magic, you could have like +3 or -3. It wouldn't matter. You wouldn't need a reasoning for it. But the reasoning is the balance. The reasoning is the balance for the consequences, and the consequences balance out the requirements. The requirements lead to an action, which leads to consequences, and if they're met, right, the requirements, and then the consequences balances out the action and the requirements in a way. And so because of the reasoning, you could say, well, the reasoning was met in one direction, the reasoning was met in the other direction. So it's good, right? It goes both ways. Okay, so the reasoning was met, they balance each other out like that. And so it's the same for so it's the same for like many things. You'll have balance in all sorts of things. And and so it's like super important, this balance. And and like when you're having the balance for the reasoning, right? The whole idea is that it keeps like going in this direction, right? And you have the requirements that just keeps, because you have the reasoning, and then you need a reasoning for that and a reasoning for that, and that's balance. It's actually balancing out in both directions, right? If you were to take the whole universe and you were to just simplify it down to a line, then that's what it'd be like. And the action is balanced by the requirements and by the consequences, and then the next action is balanced by the requirements and the consequences, and then the next action is balanced by the requirements and the consequences. All right, and it's like every point has something before and after it, unless you're at the very last point or the very first point. But then, but what happened before that? And it's like you're discovering like, so it's like, okay, and then so it's balancing out. So that's why I would say that's just a simple intro to why balance is so important. It was just kind of something I realized with the reasoning. The reasoning is the balance. It is the balance. It's like a form of balance. There's many forms of balance. I also use the form of like state of things. So the balance, like the state of things. So yeah, and and it's something that applies to everything. If it is just so fundamental to the universe, then it's going to end up applying just so many things. It's going to be super important. Just like I said, you die if you do not maintain the state of things, you do not maintain the balance, and you just become goo, or you lose all your energy. Energy drains out of you, right? So that is why balance is so important, guys. I hope you realize why balance is so important, and if you did, I hope you start to think about balance a lot more. You try to incorporate it into life, and really and like really start to realize like why balance is so important in our society and in the future, right? If you want a future, you need to have a balance for it. You need to say, okay, you want to maximize the future. Okay, so you need to minimize the present. You minimize the present so you can maximize the future. That's like a balancing act. You basically you have this, and it's either you can either have it very tall or very wide, right? So we're taking our present, and we're making it very, very tall. We're having a fancy lifestyle. We're having a very fancy lifestyle. We're making it very tall. If you want, you could just say, you know what, we're going to have survival, and that's it. And we're just going to appreciate the universe. We're just going to appreciate it, and we're going to make it very wide. That's what balance is. You just say, you know what, you can't like change the energy, but you can change how the energy is used over time. And so, you know what, instead of having a very tall but very short future for humanity, like very then we're instead just going to make it wide, very, very wide, very short, just plain survival. We're going to appreciate life. Of course, we need a couple things. We need wisdom, we need spaceships if we want to be able to increase the amount of space and survival, and habitats that biological life can live in, then it would really help to use space exploration, things like that. But anyway, guys, just a specific example again of why balance is so important, and maybe how it ties into the current state of things. And like I said, balance is the current state of things, and I use balance in different ways, so sometimes it could be a little confusing, but I hope you get it. And like the balance is just, the universe is always in balance. It's just sometimes we don't like the balance. We don't like how it is, and we can we can change it. You have the balance, right, over time. And change is the transition between states of things, between balances. And so if you want a different balance, and it's going to take you, X amount of time to get there, and X amount of energy and effort, well, guess what? You need a bunch of change. You need a lot of change. Change is time and effort, and it's just a bunch of little transitions, a bunch of little transitions. So yeah, guys, hope you really get interested in balance. Start trying to incorporate it a lot more in your thoughts. See you in the next video. I make lots more videos like this, so hope you check them out. See you guys.